by saying no to those people, what you're saying yes to is eventually you're going to attract the tribe, the people that can resonate with you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear and Three Things. Where are my people pleasers at? Well, if you raised your hand, are you just doing it because you're a people pleaser and you want to make me happy? Well, today we're going to talk about people pleasing. No, and if your mind went there, get your mind out of the gutter. It's not that kind of show. What I really want to talk about, I want to share three things that will help you to stop that vicious cycle of people pleasing that overwhelms us in our life, that gives us anxiety, that makes us resentful because we're doing things we don't want to do for perhaps people that might be ungrateful or things that don't serve the world, and that we can't do it in an authentic way. Now, one of the biggest problems is that many of us feel conditioned in some way to become people pleasers or to make other people happy. And that in and of itself, making people happy is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not, in fact, it's pretty admirable to want to go out into the world and make other people happy. It's if more people would do that, and I think a lot of us want to do that genuinely. And when we do it from an authentic and genuine and wonderful place, the world can become such a better place. I mean, if we acted on that, and we would be much happier too if we could contribute in that way. But the problem is that where we get into trouble is when we do the people pleasing, when we try to make people happy at the expense of our well-being, or the expense of somebody else's well-being, or the expense of the greater good as a whole. And we're just trying to avoid the discomfort of saying no, or the discomfort of making somebody unhappy in the moment, or we're avoiding something. This has been my thing throughout my life. Is I have been a people pleaser. And up until recently, up until the last, maybe few years, I've gotten better with it. But I had a problem with it that I had to dig deep down and find the root cause of why I was such a people pleaser. I did not want to let people down. I did not want to tell people no. I did not want to hurt people's feelings or make people feel bad. I did not want to, I wanted desperately to avoid conflict. And it was because when I dug down into the root cause of what it was, I realized that as I asked why, and I dug down into the whys of why I was such a people pleaser, why I wanted to avoid that conflict, and why I was so afraid of hurting other people, and being more authentically me in the process. The reason came because I wanted to avoid shame. Shame is the biggest thing that I want to avoid. It's the biggest emotion or feeling that I want to avoid, because shame for me is complete and utter demoralization. It's hopelessness. And with where I came from, I remember feeling shame is associated with that sense of hopelessness. And I wanted to avoid it at all cost. So really, my people pleasing was a selfish venture to save my own feelings, was to lean into discomfort that I knew already that I would prefer, which was overwhelm or anxiety or frustration or resentment. Those are the feelings I could deal with because I had some element of control in those. But in the process, I was avoiding the shame of letting people down, which is where I felt that there was no control. And there's an immense amount of power in finding the root cause and to why we're doing something. Because once we find the root cause, we could start to dismantle it a little bit. and start to discover the ways in which we can improve, and which we can start to better ourselves and rise above those feelings. Because people pleasing was a very, very serious issue for me, and it was leading me down a path of being unauthentic and ungenuine. I was Mr. Absolutely, because I would say absolutely to everybody. That was my word, because it was a big, many syllables, but it also but it was also something I said all the time. Hey, can you do this for me? Absolutely. Hey, do you agree with me on this? Absolutely. Did I really? No. I was just trying to avoid the conflict, because conflict for me was so painful that I wanted to avoid the shame or the humiliation that might happen. So once I realized that it was avoiding shame that that was leading me down that path, the question then would become, well, is that really true? Is people pleasing, is that act actually bringing you away from shame? Or would the result of saying no bring shame? Is that really going to be the result? And when I dug down a little deeper, most of the time, when I asked that question, is it going to bring shame? The answer is no. It'll bring discomfort. It'll make somebody disappointed, perhaps. It'll make the other person maybe not happy in the instance. But as long as I can shift my attention toward the greater good, then that helped balance out the idea that, hey, this wasn't so bad. And the problem is that many of us have been conditioned for some reason. There's some underlying reason why we want to please people, why we are people pleasers, why we want to avoid that conflict. Digging down and finding that is where the root cause is. But many of us have that conditioned thing, and that's where the problem is. And what that does is it makes us constantly think about what other people are thinking. It makes our minds go crazy. It overwhelms our minds, and it makes us avoid the great, wonderful contributions we can make to the world if we just learn to say no. If we just learn to set our own boundaries and do the things that contribute more to our world. And so there really are three ways that I want to share today. And there's a lot that goes into this. So certainly digging in with, whether it be with a therapist or digging into the root cause yourself, finding that means is going to be important. But I want to share with you just three ways that can help you shift your focus from pleasing people and find your path to freedom. Because the results, if you can find that path out of people pleasing, and you could free yourself from that, the result is you're going to find greater freedom. You'll learn to live true to yourself. And by saying no to the people that may be taking advantage of you, or that are requesting a yes out of you for something that may be at the expense of your own well-being or somebody else, by saying no to those people, what you're saying yes to is eventually you're going to attract the tribe, the people that can resonate with you. It may feel lonely at first saying no to somebody, because maybe the root cause of your people pleasing may be to avoid, to find that community, to make sure that you're in a community, and to avoid loneliness. Maybe being alone is that thing you're trying to avoid. But remember this: if it's not authentically you could have the biggest community in the world, and if it's not authentically you, you're still alone. The way to find that community is to find the authentic community. Find the thing you can say yes to. Find the people that can be comfortable and okay with your boundaries. Then you found your tribe. And I'll tell you that when you learn to say no in the right ways, you're going to attract the tribe. You're going to attract the right people. And so there's really the three things that can help you to shift your focus away from pleasing people to find that path of freedom are: first, instead of being a people pleaser, first become a principles pleaser. Now, this gets back to an important rule that I've said early on, and that you need to find early and often. Find your core values. If you know what your core values are, you already know what you're going to say yes to. You should be saying no to just about everything else. Saying yes to your core values and running every question or every situation through the filter of your core values is that governor that tells you where you are. So if you get that uncomfortable feeling in the pit of your stomach, like saying yes is going to overwhelm you, or you're going to be doing something that's not quite right, run it through the filter of your core values. What are your core values? Are your core values compassion, growth? Say one of your core values is compassion. Well, if somebody's asking you to do something unethical or at the expense of somebody else, then the answer might be no. You might not want to be pleasing people in that case. Look at the greater a number of people that you might be pleasing in here. So once you can transcend the idea of people pleasing and become a principles pleaser, that's when you stop being a people pleaser and you start being a principles pleaser, and you start pleasing the right type of people. That, I'm going to say that again. So once you can rise above being a people pleaser and start becoming a principles pleaser, you start to attract the right type of people. You say yes to the right type of people. And that's a powerful lesson. And then you start living true to yourself. Find your core values. Find your core values and first become a principles pleaser. The second thing that will help you to stop just being a people pleaser for the sake of being a people pleaser is to find your non-negotiables. Now, what does that mean? Finding your non-negotiables is really, that's setting your boundaries. You know, what are your non-negotiables? If your non-negotiable is that I reserve my Friday nights for spending time with my family playing board games, that's a non-negotiable to me. Well, then if your boss tells you, I need you to work Friday night and I need you to do it for this, then what's your answer? If your core values are stating that family is one of the most important things to you, and you have a non-negotiable that says that you are to be home on a Friday night playing board games with the family, then your answer to your boss should be no. That is violating my rules. Now, obviously, that becomes difficult when you're in a job situation, and you need to carefully weigh that out when you're trying to apply for a job that might ask you to do things on a Friday night. But the point stands that whether it be a boss or a family member or a friend or somebody else trying to get you to break your non-negotiables, you have to stand firm on those. Those are the things that you set. And so those non-negotiables can be things like your nutrition, like your exercise routine, like your morning routine. Staying true to those things helps you to become more confident, stronger, and it gives you that courage and helps you to rise above that, whatever may be that primary issue or that root cause that is leading you to being a people pleaser. And it'll help your anxiety to go down. Setting those non-negotiables is going to help you to reduce that anxiety and rise above that fear. And then finally, once you have those two things in effect, this final piece of the puzzle comes into play. This is where you put those into action. And this is the hard one, my friends, but this is really the action step. And really any action step is going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be incredibly rewarding. That once you have your core value set, you become a principles pleaser. Once you set your non-negotiables, once you establish those, the things that are vitally important to you, then you learn to say no. You simply learn to say no. This can be hard because when you get that fear in the pit of your stomach, when somebody comes at you and asks you for something that violates your values or something that violates your non-negotiables, or that you simply just don't want to do, and you want to do it, and your brain is telling you to do it anyway because you don't want to piss this person off. Well, you simply have to say no. And if you need some guidance on how to do this, there is a great TEDx talk from a woman named Sarah Knight, who did a TED talk called, and pardon my French here, "The Magic of Not Giving a Fuck." And in this video, she talks about all of the ways in which we can start to stop pleasing people, and essentially she calls it a fuck bank, where we have a certain number of fuck bucks that we can spend, and if we run out of fuck bucks, we run out of fucks. So we don't have any fucks to give. And so ultimately, the goal, the purpose of that talk was to help people understand that, so that we come better. And so and her advice to people in that talk is to say no more often, and to say no unapologetically. Say no in a kind way, but say no and stick to it. And if anybody's going to shame you for it, then that's on them. They're creating that toxic atmosphere. Now, certainly that no has to be, saying no is a careful art, because you don't want to say yes to somebody that you want to go to that you're going to go to a party, or you're going to go to an event or something like that, and then just back out at the last minute, because that's kind of shady. But if you don't want to go to a party, just say, I don't want to go to that party, or I don't have the time. You have the right to do it. And if you struggle with it, Miss Knight's advice is to simply, when you're asked, pause, then visualize, the event or your outcome, and then say no. Just say no. No is a very simple word to say, because it's only one syllable. It flows off the tongue very easily, and that's all you have to say. If more comes at you like, but, no. I said no. No, thank you. Absolutely not. And there's that absolutely again. They called me absolutely guy for a reason. So those are the three things that I would suggest that you do to stop being a people pleaser, and to start pleasing the right community. And this is not in any way easy, especially to start. But when you put in the practice, it gets easier. You learn to do it better. You learn to live to your core values. You become stronger, and you can visualize yourself as more confident in the future the more you do it. Because if you're going to lean into saying yes, being a yes person, and being a people pleaser, what you're leaning into in that point is really a life of it's a very small life. You are subject to everybody else's whims, and it's not your life that you're living, and you're not living genuinely and authentically. So if you want to live an abundant life, learn to say no to the wrong things. Learn to pause, learn to visualize, and learn to say no. So first, become a principles pleaser. Know what your core values are. Lean into them. And second, identify your non-negotiables. What are your boundaries? What boundaries are you going to set for yourself? And then finally, with those two things in action, learn to say no. And then practice. And practice makes you stronger. And if you do that, you can find greater freedom in your life. You will live true to yourself, and you'll become more authentically you. And that in turn is going to attract the right community, the right types of people to you, and you will live a more abundant life. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.